Welcome everyone to our Hayne Solutions webinar, our FPM webinar series, where today we're going to be talking about improving control and efficiency in IBM Cognos controller using Hayne Unity. My name is Mark Cracknell and I'll be joined by my colleague Neil Whitmore for the demonstration. So today's agenda, we're going to have a quick introduction to Hayne, and then we'll talk about some of the common issues around the period end process for data load and consolidations using Cognos controller. We'll have a demonstration of Hayne Unity. We'll talk about summary and pricing, and then we'll open up the floor to questions at the end of the session. So a quick overview about Hayne. We specialise in FPM solutions to the Office of Finance, and we cover the whole FPM suite, covering consolidation, budgeting, planning and forecasting, report and analyse, and disclosure, what we term the 4 pillars of FPM. The IBM Cognos suite is the area that we cover, and we are experts in Cognos Controller, TM1, BI and CDM, and also the integration of those products into a full FPM solution. We have over 50 man-years of experience in business analytics, and we're an IBM Cognos support providing partner across all of those products. And we're very much IBM's go-to partner for delivery to the Office of Finance. Some of the customers that we have as an organisation: we work with a lot of organisations from FTSE 100 companies down to smaller organisations, and these companies can range from applications of 500 users down to some that only have a handful. So a very diverse set of customers. So let's have a look at some of the issues around the period end process. So for many companies, we've got complex and varying processes to load data from disparate sources. So many companies will have multiple ERP systems, and we'll be taking data from those ERP systems and mapping those into Cognos Controller. We sometimes have users with multiple companies on different platforms. So we may have one person looking after 3 countries, and they may have 3 different underlying ERP systems, and they have to run multiple imports to import that data into controller. There's a lack of control really around the data from ERP systems, in that because we're taking data out of ERPs and we're taking it into a format which can be modified, then there's a risk that that data taken from the ERP does not equal that data that's finally loaded into controller. And this of course increases audit complexity and risk. There's a high reliance on IT for data extract and feeds at the period end. And we also have the situation where there are a number of repeatable manual processes at the period end which have to be dealt with, examples of this being multiple prior year reconsolidations. So let's have a look at a typical period end data load process. So commonly we have our ERP system, and we'll have some kind of mechanism which extracts data out of the ERP system into normally a CSV file or text file. Via an import specification, we'll then bring data into controller, and we wait as the data loads. The screen freezes at that point. We also have a number of customers who will take data out of their underlying ERP and then manually enter that into controller using either forms or perhaps using Excel FX files. So what we're really looking at here is a 2-step process: a button press to get the data out of ERP, and a button press again to load that data into Cognos Controller. So one of the fundamentals of compliance and risk is around the fact that we would expect the data in our ERP system to equal repo base inside controller. And this is a fundamental control which Hayne believes is best practice. Of course, what can happen with this intermediary step of taking the data into a CSV file is that manual changes can occur in that center ground. So what are the pains about loading data? Well, Time to complete. So we've got a multiple touch data load process, and we've got to wait whilst that data processes into controller. And we potentially have different user processes for each company if someone's looking after multiple companies, which can lead to confusion. So we have our normal issue at the period end, where we've got highly paid qualified staff doing time consuming tasks and encountering potential delays. In terms of level of control, as we've seen, flat files can be modified after extract from the ERP system, which gives us that problem where repo base does not equal the ERP. And in effect what we're doing is we're allowing uncontrolled and undocumented adjustments to the system, and this has a consequential break in the audit trail. So we have a loss of control. It's more costly, it's less accurate, and we have a slower financial close. In respect of confidence in the process, management and auditors cannot rely upon the fact that repo base equals ERP. And there is a perception that having a two-step process and taking data files out into CSV text files is a clunky process. And this leads to the fact that there's a loss of control in the results, and there's a loss of confidence in the data within Cognos Controller. So confidence in the process and the numbers can easily be lost. So let's look at how Hayne Unity can help us with this period end process. So what we're showing here on the left hand side is 3 ERP systems, multiple ERP systems, and we want to get our data into controller. So what Hayne Unity allows us to do is, with a one button press, we can bring all of that data from 3 disparate ERP systems into Cognos Controller, and we can monitor that data load process from within controller as the data loads. By doing it this way, we know that the data that's coming out of the ERP system equals the data that is loaded to repo base within inside controller, because the user cannot modify the data as part of that process. So let's move on to some consolidation issues around the period end. So an example of this is a customer who has a reconsolidation requirement and reconsolidates prior year data at current rates, as an example. So in this particular process, we need to create multiple consolidations in the correct order so that data is carried forward correctly. There can be multiple actualities to reconsolidate. A lot of companies will have AC, they'll have AB, AP, actual at prior year. So multiple actualities. And if something goes wrong in that consolidation, it can be a long time to wait until the batch job ends to repeat. Some consolidations for companies that we work with extend to over 40 minutes for a 12 period consolidation. So you can have a long wait if there's an error. And all of these mistakes, of course, lose costly time in the close process. So how does Hayne Unity help with these problems that we face? So in Hayne Unity we can make multiple selections. So we can multi-select actualities, in this case actual and budget. We can select multiple periods. In this case here, the example is 1201 up to 1312, i.e. over 2 years. And we can select multiple consolidation types. So in this example, LE and MG. Of course, those of you who know controller know that when we run consolidations in controller, we can only select one actuality and one consolidation type. So with one button press with the selections on the left, Hayne Unity will create, in this case, 96 individual consolidation jobs ordered as required. So what we're doing is we're breaking down those multiple selections into individual consolidation jobs. And so Hayne Unity increases the control we've got over setting consolidations and helps us to reduce manual work at the period end. So let's move on to a demonstration of Hayne Unity. I'll just pass you over to my colleague Neil Whitmore.
Thank you very much, Mark. As you can see, here we have the Unity desktop running on the controller desktop, so the two products are perfectly in line. The desktop is set up using the local preferences, using the start page URL key with a reference to the IIS website for Unity. As you can see, there are two tabs. There's a data transfer tab, which enables you to load data from disparate ledgers across your organisation, and the consolidation tab, which enables you to do mass consolidations. More of that in a minute. Back to data transfer. You can select actuality in the normal way as you would in controller. Only active actualities are available, so any actualities that have been switched off or made inactive won't appear in here. The period range is a range of periods defined for data transfer purposes only. So that's notwithstanding any periods or submissions that you've set up within controller, but we have a discrete range here. These have been set by a server preference. The server preference is called Hayne start per and Hayne end per, and as you can see, we've set them for entire year. You probably would normally only have one period for just running ordinary management accounts, but if you're doing budgets and forecasts, you might want to extend that. So I'm going to select period 1501. As soon as I've selected that, notice that the currencies that are relevant for that period and for that user are displayed here. Moving on to company. This is a list of companies that have been set up purely for Unity. This is not a list of all the companies in the company structure. This is maintained with a lookup table. So we're using controller functionality all the way through here. Hayne underscore comp is the lookup table, and any entries on here will appear here. So just selecting all of those companies. So it's possible to select all with the shift key. It's possible to select one or non-continuous ranges using the control key. As you can see, the system confirms where it's going to get the data from for each company. So there's a number of Navision instances envisaged here in the demo, and a SAP instance as well. So far, Hayne has managed to connect successfully to a number of ledger systems, including Navision, SAP, JD Edwards, and a couple of instances of Sage. Any ledger system that can be accessed using any form of SQL will work with Unity. As you can see, the play button is greyed out. That's because the system is locked. So I've selected correctly for the demo, but incorrectly for the purposes of loading data, a period which is locked. So if I change that period to another period, let's try 1502, yes, we're happy, we're getting unlocked and processing, so this will load data. And this is key to productivity. How many times have we as users loaded data to lock periods and then come up with a very long log report that says for every record in the file, data is locked, period is locked. Notice now that the play button is enabled. So if I press that play button, the system will now submit 7 batches into the queue and report on each one as it's loading. So this is going away, running dynamic SQL against ledger systems, and coming back with a batch result and a log report summary. So this is the same log report summary as you get the front page of a log report. And as you can see, it's all been successful, all finished, no errors, and there are a few discarded transactions. What you would do normally is go to log reports, check what these discarded rows are, and as you can see, they're the same records here as they are on the front page of Unity, but you can open these up as you would normally and see what the details are. There may be missing entries in lookup tables, whatever. You fix them and you reprocess, and that's when you'd reprocess just a couple of companies, not all of them. And that's it. If there are any locking issues before you run the process and you need to unlock a company, then you can refresh using the locking button. And finally, for data transfer, if you are a customer, there are a few, not many, if you are a customer who regularly has more than one live production database, then it's possible from this desktop to switch databases purely for the purposes of data transfer, I hasten to add. Log into another database, load data, move into the next database, load data, so it's a far more efficient way of doing things. So that's it for data transfer. In terms of consolidation, this is a capability to build mass consolidation batch jobs from a few parameters. So say for example, and we have a number of customers who do this, you want to reconsolidate, say up to 10 years, there's no particular limit, but typically people often want to see 5 to 10 years of history at current exchange rates. This is what this is normally used for. What people are doing is having to set off large numbers of batches, all of them 12 period or 13 period batches, which can take an awful long time to run, obviously. But if you've set it off in the wrong order, you have to wait while those 13 periods consolidate, because it's not possible to stop a job in the batch queue. What Hayne Unity does is it works out from the parameters that we set it here the correct order to do things, so removing that risk, and it creates multiple batch jobs, one for each period, and therefore if you do get it wrong, you've only got to wait one period, not 13 periods process before you can start the process again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I can just select a couple of periods from the list, maybe a couple of actualities. Notice the error report, I should explain that in a minute. A couple of consolidation types. Now what this is saying to me is that period 1501 is locked, however I have got unlock all periods option selected, so it's confused. Have you locked it, haven't you? Do you mean to consolidate this? Yes I do, so I'm going to override that. That then enables the play button, and then we'll throw literally a large number, just a short number here for demonstration purposes, but we can throw a large number of batches at the batch queue. Whilst that's processing, I'll just mention the fact that we have some settings here for those of you who use allocations or AFCs or user-defined business rules or contribution calculations. If you wish, these can be included or excluded. These options can be set or unset via a configuration file in the background, so that it always runs the way you want to run it. As you can see, the batch queue, just like the batch queue on the data transfer, is automatically refreshing, unlike the batch queue in Controller, which has to be manually refreshed by that annoying repetitive clicking that we all have to do. As you can see, that's now completed, and that completes the demonstration for mass consolidation and the demonstration of Unity. Back to you, Mark.
Thank you very much for that demonstration, Neil. So what we'll do now is we'll just summarise some of those issues that we've just seen demonstrated by Neil. So let's have a look again at that period end data load process. So we have multiple ERP systems, and we've got our data in Cognos Controller. We want to get our data into Cognos Controller. So with a single button press using Hayne Unity, we can take data from those 3 underlying ERPs, multiple ERP systems, and we can load that into Cognos Controller. And whilst that's loading, we can monitor that data load process from within the controller console. We've now got certainty then that our data from our ERP system is equal to repo base within controller. In terms of consolidations, we've shown you that we can take multiple actualities, multiple periods and multiple consolidation types. And again, with one button press, we're able to create individual consolidation jobs ordered in the correct order. So Hayne Unity is increasing our control over setting of consolidations and reduces our manual work. So a summary of Hayne Unity. So what we've shown you today is a single selection process to load data. So a user with multiple companies on different platforms can run multiple imports with one button press. What this provides you with is a greater control over the data that's within controller, and confidence that our ERP data equals that's loaded into controller repo base. So we're reducing audit complexity and risk, and potentially the cost of audit, which should be far simpler. We've got less reliance on IT for data extracts and feeds, and around consolidation and the processes there, we're automating and allowing you to run multiple prior year reconsolidations or multiple consolidations at the press of a button. So some of the pains that are addressed by Hayne Unity in terms of time to complete, we now have an efficient data load and consolidation process, which we can view as the data load processes into controller. So there's a single user process for each company, which simplifies the whole data load process. At the end of the day, what this does is it provides more time to the individuals to perform analysis and provide insight for decision makers, doing those high level tasks that we want them to do rather than performing those manual tasks which add little value. In terms of control, we have that confidence around ERP equal to repo base, and all adjustments are therefore controlled from within the controller application, and we have a complete audit trail from ERP through to final reported numbers. So we have data control and auditability increased with the use of Hayne Unity. In terms of confidence in the process, it simplifies the audit process, and management can have more confidence in the data, and as it's a one button press, it's perceived to be a modern process. So confidence in the data is increased and risk is reduced. So just some future development ideas around Hayne Unity. Several other processes which we know are quite inefficient and which we'd like to cover within a future product. So controlled upload of Excel spreadsheets, budgets and forecasts. A lot of our customers will be using the FXVal capability. As we know at the moment, this doesn't produce an audit trail, so we're trying to look at something which will give us an audit trail for that and automate that process. A lot of companies we work with still like the idea of doing company or group journals from within Excel and then uploading those. So we'll be looking at whether we can automate that process and make that easier for the user using an Excel template. And also, as we increasingly get into integration and we're using TM1, is automating that whole process of taking data out of TM1 for budgets and forecasts and loading that into Cognos Controller. So on to licensing and pricing. So pricing is in sterling, and the basis of pricing is around your Cognos Controller server type. Server type is based on the number of users, and you'll just need to look at your licensing type to see where you fall within that. So for Cognos Controller Express, the license is 2,500. That includes first year support and installation of 1,500. Standard controller server type increases to 5,000. Enterprise is 7,500. For all of those, installation is £1,500. Support onwards is 20% of the initial license price. So installation includes software installation, any changes in controller configuration that need to be made, that Neil pointed out in the demonstration, and working with you to connect to one data source. And support entitles you to future upgrades free of charge. If anyone would like to contact Hayne about what you've seen today, then please feel free to contact Lynn Rickards or myself, Mark Cracknell, on the email addresses provided, or feel free to call the Hayne office. I'll be open the floor to questions and answers.